Have you ever questioned whether a staunch nonbeliever, someone who dismissed every whisper of faith, might one night be dragged into a realm beyond reason and shown a future none could ignore? In a suburban loft in River Glen, Sarah's laughter over dinner abruptly gave way to an unshakable chest pain that forced her into a dim bathroom, where a single glance in a flickering mirror told her she was on the brink of death. Within moments, her world collapsed into an abyss of pure darkness. Yet, from that void emerged a sliver of light, so powerful it changed her forever. Witnesses say she returned not just alive, but burdened with a vision of humanity's hidden fractures and a single urgent plea for change. Before you scroll on, type 777 if you believe there is more to life than meets the eye, and if you're ready to discover what she saw, because once this story unfolds, there will be no turning back. What happens when someone who never believed in God confronts a future so dire it demands action? The answer lies just beyond that darkness, waiting to reveal what must happen next. Have you ever wondered whether you might be shown a glimpse of what's to come before your heart even stops? Imagine finding yourself at a dinner party in a city you barely know, surrounded by laughter and clinking glasses, only to realize you can't catch your breath. That's exactly how my story begins. An atheist who never believed in anything beyond the physical, suddenly grappling with the possibility that life, and maybe even the future, has far more to reveal than I ever imagined. It was a chilly evening in Vancouver, and I was seated at a cozy table with friends who had recently relocated to the Pacific Northwest. We chatted about everything from work frustrations to weekend plans. But then, out of nowhere, I felt a crushing pressure in my chest. Have you ever felt as though an invisible hand were squeezing your ribcage so tightly that no amount of breathing could relieve the pain? At first, I chalked it up to indigestion or a sudden panic attack. I didn't think anything so dire could happen to me. After all, I had no faith in miracles or divine intervention. I believed only in what could be seen and measured. But the pain intensified, radiating through my shoulders and down my arms until I could barely stand. Panicking, I excused myself and stumbled toward the washroom. Inside, I locked the door, leaned heavily against the cool tile wall, and stared at my reflection in the mirror. My eyes were wide with fear, my face pale and slick with sweat. "Heather," I whispered to myself, "imagine you are peering back at your own vulnerability. If you don't get help right now, you are going to die." The words felt both absurd and urgent, as if I were channeling someone else's warning. Was it my own intuition? A flicker of something beyond logic? I had no answer, but the dread settled in my chest like a stone. Stepping out of the washroom, I gasped, clutching my chest. "I need an ambulance." I managed to choke out, my voice trembling so fiercely that the music in the room seemed to hush itself. Everyone froze. My fiancé picked up on my panic first and insisted he could drive me to the hospital. But I looked at him with a desperation that words couldn't convey. "No," I said, heart hammering. "You don't understand this city. I need an ambulance right now." It felt as though my life literally depended on that one decision. Have you ever had a moment so raw you couldn't let anyone else decide for you? Before I knew it, my fiancé's determined hands had shoved me into the backseat of our car instead. We barreled down a dark highway, the glow of streetlights flickering across my vision like distant beacons I could barely focus on. A cold dread washed over me. This wasn't the familiar drive home or a late-night snack run. I felt like I was speeding toward death itself. Do you recall any moment when you knew, with absolute certainty, that your time was running out? That was the intensity of what I felt as the car whipped through unfamiliar streets. Then came the revelation that all-consuming darkness It began behind me, creeping forward like an insidious tide. First, it was at the periphery of my sight, a deepening shadow that swallowed the edges of my vision. Then, inch by inch, it enveloped me, until all I could see was a pinpoint of light, a tiny, fragile hole in an otherwise impenetrable blackness. The sensation was eerily similar to the psalmist's words, "Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil." Psalm 23:4. Except in that moment, I wasn't fearless. I was utterly terrified. Have you ever felt yourself slipping into a void so complete you wondered if you could ever escape? In those final moments of consciousness, I tried to wrestle with my thoughts. I thought, is this it? Is this how my story ends? My breathing became ragged, each gasp a desperate plea for more time. My mind drifted to every person I loved, to every argument I had left unresolved, to every doubt I harbored about whether there was something more to existence, and then nothing. The darkness swallowed even that tiny hole of light, and for a heartbeat, I was sure I had crossed over into oblivion. The fear was all-consuming, yet, oddly, there was also a sense of surrender, a realization that I was no longer in control. As the blackness closed in, I clung to one thought. If there were a future beyond this moment, if there were a purpose I had missed, I wanted to see it. Did I believe in God? No. But in that instant, as the darkness pressed against me, something deeper stirred a sense that this might be the threshold of something far larger than my own ego and disbelief. And with that final flicker of curiosity, everything faded. I won't reveal what came next, but let me ask you, if you stood on the brink of absolute nothingness, would you dare to hope that you might glimpse tomorrow? Would you want to know what you and the world will become? Let me know in the comments below, because once you hear what I saw, there will be no turning back. Have you ever wondered what it would feel like to drift into absolute nothingness, where even your own hand disappears into a darkness so complete it defies description? That's exactly where I found myself, suspended in a void that had no floor, no ceiling, no walls, just an infinite expanse of pitch black stillness. Imagine arriving at a secluded lake at midnight, slipping into its cool waters and floating entirely alone, except now, replace the water with a velvet black void that supports you without effort. It was as if I were cradled by some unseen presence, and though I had expected fear or panic, I felt nothing but an almost blissful calm. Do you recall a moment when you were so utterly free of tension that time seemed to stretch forever? That's the peace I experienced there. At first, I couldn't hear a single thing, no whispers of wind, no distant city hum, not even the beating of my own heart. It was eerily silent, a quiet so profound that you might imagine every sound in the universe had been muted. Yet, paradoxically, I wasn't afraid. Instead, I was curious. What kind of realm offers comfort in utter darkness? Could there be purpose in this emptiness? In that stillness, I tested the darkness by raising my hand before my face, half expecting to catch at least a faint outline against some background. But there was nothing, not even a shadow. Have you ever stared into a darkness so profound that light itself seemed like a myth? Then, far off in that boundless blackness, a faint glimmer emerged, no larger than a pinprick at first, yet impossibly bright. It beckoned me, like the promise of dawn on the darkest of nights. As it grew, it took on the shape of a swirling tunnel, its edges shimmering with layers of gray, silver, and intermittent flashes of light. Suddenly, I realized this wasn't merely a light, it was a passage. Reminds me of the promise in John 8:12. I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. In that moment, I wondered if this tunnel was that light leading me somewhere beyond comprehension. Without warning, I was drawn forward, compelled by a force I could neither see nor resist. Have you ever felt yourself carried by currents you cannot swim against? That was me, arms and legs instinctively tensing as if to push back, only to discover there was no surface to push against. I tried to extend a hand, hoping to feel a boundary, something tangible to hold my ascent. But the tunnel enveloped me, and I realized, with a jolt, that I had absolutely no control. My body, or whatever form I occupied now, was being carried upward, faster than I could process. Panic flickered in my mind. Who knew where this spiral led? Was it salvation or something darker? As I rose, the walls of the tunnel rippled with shifting shade tints of dove gray and pearl white, interlaced with sparks that resembled distant stars. It felt like swimming through a cosmic river, guided by an unseen current toward a destination both alluring and terrifying. Did I have a choice in this journey? Not at all. I was entirely at the mercy of this mysterious current. Each second stretched into eternity as I tumbled higher, my thoughts a whirl of disbelief. Why me, an unapologetic atheist, taken to witness this? What lay at the end of that tunnel? Fear coiled in my chest, tightening my breath. I thought of Job's words, "Yet he knows the way that I take. When he has tried me, I shall come forth as gold." Job 23:10. Was I being tested, or was this merely a cosmic accident? The closer I got to the light, the more my nerve unraveled every fiber of my being screamed for understanding. But answers remained hidden, concealed by the brilliance that grew until it obscured everything else. In the blink before I felt myself pass through, I experienced a jolt of vertigo, a sensation of falling and rising all at once, as though gravity itself had been rewired. My mind raced. Was this the point of no return? Was I about to glimpse a future I could never unsee? I could not tell, but one thing was certain. Curiosity had turned to dread, because I understood now that once I crossed this threshold, there would be no way back to ignorance. Would you have the courage to reach out and touch the light, knowing it might change everything you believe? I want to know, if tomorrow you found yourself catapulted into this tunnel, would you welcome the unknown or fight to stay in the dark? Tell me in the comments, because what happened next will challenge every assumption you've ever held. Have you ever imagined what it's like to be swept upward through a tunnel of pure, blinding light, so intense that it seems to radiate every hue at once? As I continued my ascent, the sensation changed from a straight vertical pull to what felt like an up and over motion, as though I were cresting the very top of the tunnel. In that moment, I could see what lay ahead, an extreme, almost unbearable brilliancy, blue-white glow, so vivid it nearly seared itself into my vision. Have you ever squinted at the noonday sun and felt its rays dance across your eyelids? Now imagine that multiplied 100-fold, yet warm and inviting rather than scorching. Suddenly, I found myself fully within that brightness, and for the first time in my life, I was truly stunned. In all my yearshek, even as a child, I believed that death meant only dust and darkness. I remember sitting on my bedroom floor at age 10 and asking Dad, "What happens when we die?" He shrugged and said, "Nothing. We live, we die. That's all. Then you're in the ground, under 10 feet of dirt." Every syllable he spoke landed in me like a brick. I took it as gospel. I had no concept of heaven, no inkling that any realm beyond our ordinary world could exist. When I was invited once to my cousin's Sunday school, the teacher asked with wide-eyed expectation if I believed in God. I shrugged and answered no, and she looked at me as if I'd confessed to a grave sin. Did you ever feel the discomfort of admitting a simple truth that shocks others to their core? But there, Suspended within that unimaginable radiance, all those childhood certainties shattered. This light wasn't just a single color. It pulsed with layers blue, white at its core, with fleeting ripples of silver and hints of gold, like the sun's rays refracted in a diamond. It seemed to have depth, as though I could dive into it forever and still discover new layers of brilliance. Have you ever seen sunlight glinting off a mirror and felt momentarily blinded by its clarity? This was 1,000 times more profound a living, breathing light that felt almost like a congregation of stars, each one singing in silent harmony. Then, out of that light, figures began to emerge, dozens upon dozens of silhouettes stepping forward as if they'd been waiting for me. The best way I can describe them is like those enormous floodlights you see at a football stadium, except each light beam was a person, standing at ground level in a tightly packed formation. Imagine stacking all those stadium lights on top of one another, each beam piercing through the sky, and then envision a crowd of people radiating that same intensity. It was overwhelming. I felt as though I'd stumbled onto the most exclusive VIP section of the universe, except there was no privilege here, only unconditional welcome. At first, I panicked. In my very unchristian atheist gut, I wanted to push them away. "Get the hell back," I shouted, even though my voice felt fragile and echoing, as if heard through miles of empty space. "Stay away from me. I don't. This isn't real." My heart raced, and for a split second, I wondered if I could somehow close my eyes and return to the tunnel. But then, out of the mass of luminescent faces, familiar figures stepped forward. There was Nanami, great-grandmother, her loving eyes shining with a warmth I had never really known while she was alive. Behind her stood my great-grandfather, stronger than memory, his steadfast gaze softening as he met mine. I saw Aunt Alice with her cheerful grin, and Uncle Dick, whose jokes used to make me groan when I was a child. Each one looked exactly as they had in life, but somehow more real, more vivid, bathed in that ethereal glow. I stood frozen, my rude words echoing hollowly. How could these people I'd mourned on earth appear here? How could my great-grandmother, who passed long before I ever questioned God, be standing before me? "Heather," she said, her voice like a gentle breeze whispering through wheat fields, and I felt tears well up instantaneously. "You have died." The simplicity of her words stunned me. There was no malice, no judgment, only a serene certainty. My mind reeled. Me? Dead? This can't be happening. Yet there it was, written across her loving face. Have you ever had a moment so surreal that every fiber of your being doubts your own senses? She stepped closer, and with each step, I felt a surge of emotion I'd never permitted myself to acknowledge. A deep, abiding love I had nearly forgotten. In my childhood, I desperately clung to Dad's stark explanation. We live, we die. But here, confronted by Nanny's unwavering kindness, that creed seemed hollow. She reached out, placing a hand on my shoulder. "Heather, you didn't believe, but now you can see," she murmured. And in that single touch, I felt an acceptance so profound, I thought my chest might implode. It was as if she was telling me, no matter where you stood in life, you belong here now. The light around us pulsed in rhythm with her words, and I realized that this place, whatever it was filled with support, gentleness, and a love beyond anything I'd ever experienced or even dreamed of. It reminded me of 1 Corinthians 13:12. For now we see through a glass, darkly, but then face to face. In that moment, I understood exactly what Paul meant. It was like looking at my life through a distorted reflection, then suddenly being shown the truth in perfect clarity. All my fear, all my doubt, all my arrogance dissolved into that river of light. And yet, I had so many questions. Would you, if given the chance, ask why you never believed? Would you challenge every notion you held? As I stood there, I wanted to plead with Nanny for more answers. Why now? Why me? But I sensed that I wasn't supposed to have all the answers. Instead, I was meant to simply feel to trust that even in death, love endures. The knowledge that I had once dismissively answered no when asked if I believed in God seemed both shameful and insignificant. In that brilliance, faith was no longer a question. It was a living reality, woven into every particle of light and every memory of those who had gone before. I won't reveal what happened next, but let me ask you, if you found yourself face to face with loved ones you'd only known in memory bathed in a light more vivid than life itself, would you dare to embrace it? Would you let go of every doubt and simply step forward? Tell me in the comments, because what I saw after this moment changed me forever. And once you hear it, you'll never look at your own future the same way again. I collapsed onto my knees, and in that instant I was struck by the most bewildering thought. How can there be solid ground beneath me when I'm supposed to be drifting in nothingness? Everything around me was a boundless expanse of pure, blinding white light, standing at the center of a snow-covered plain beneath a noonday sun, except there was no warmth, only a stark, immaculate glow. You can imagine my confusion. If I was already beyond life, why should there still be something tangible under my legs? I cradled my face in my hands as tears poured freely. I don't want to be here, I wailed, voice choked with grief. I didn't even get to live. I didn't get to do anything. My life was far too short. Can you picture that moment when you realize something you once took for granted, breathing, feeling sunlight, making plans has been stripped away forever? Then, as though responding to my anguish, another force made itself known. A higher energy that filled the space around me like a gentle flame. I couldn't see its shape or contour. I could only sense it as a vibration, a frequency that felt like pure fire burning away all doubt and fear. It was as if I had become attuned to a resonance beyond human hearing, one that whispered, "You will be all right. Yes, you have died, but there is more ahead." In that moment, I was reminded of the promise in Isaiah 41:10. "Fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God." The presence didn't speak in words I could hear. Rather, the message was delivered straight into my mind, a comforting certainty that despite everything, I was not alone. Almost immediately, I was swept into what can only be described as a life review, an accelerated, immersive journey through every moment I had ever experienced. It happened so quickly that my heart seemed to skip beats, yet each memory was vivid and unforgettable. I wasn't floating above these recollections like a spectator in a theater. Instead, I was plunged into them from within, reliving each sensation, each emotion, joy, sorrow, regret, love, all at once. It was a bit like the vision described in 1 Corinthians 4:5. "For the Lord will bring to light what is hidden in darkness, and will expose the motives of the heart." In those flickering scenes, I felt every impulse and every choice well beyond what my 5 senses had ever allowed me to perceive. What struck me most powerfully was the realization of how interconnected we all are. I saw that even the faintest, most fleeting thought I ever had about another person left an imprint on their soul, whether I pointed a judgmental finger or harbored a secret wish for someone's hardship. Have you ever wondered how your unspoken thoughts might ripple through someone else's life without them even knowing? It was then that I understood, in the most profound way, the truth of Proverbs 27:19. As water reflects the face, so one's life reflects the heart. Every harsh thought, every unkind judgment had been stored in the hearts of those around me, shaping their own self-image in ways I could never have foreseen. All of this unfolded in an instanter cascade of insight so deep that fear simply dissolved in its wake. The presence that guided me through this review did not judge or condemn, it only revealed. And as the life review images began to fade, I was left with a lingering question. If every thought we harbor truly touches another soul, how might we choose our thoughts differently from this moment on? Have you ever thought back to your school days and remembered that one friend with whom you had the most complicated bond, someone you fought with endlessly, but who was also the only person you could confide in? That was the case for me. There was this girl I spent nearly every day with in elementary and middle school. We shared secrets and laughter, but we also competed over everything from grades to who got to sit in the front row of class. Imagine calling someone your friend, yet knowing that any moment could erupt into a heated argument over something as trivial as whose turn it was to use the swings. Yet when we got along, it felt effortless, like two sides of the same coin. We laughed until our sides ached, and we pushed each other to be better, even if our tongues were sharp at times. Looking back, I realized that some of the cutting things I said to her weren't just casual insults. They lodged themselves in her heart. She would carry my words with her, believing every harsh critique as if it were gospel, and I carried some of her barbs in the same way. Does that ever happen to you when a few careless words you thought were forgotten keep resurfacing, shaping how you see yourself? In that odd friendship, there was always an energy exchange, almost like an invisible tug of war between us. We fed off each other's moods, impacting one another in ways we didn't fully understand at the time. It wasn't until my life review that I saw how even a small act of kindness, like giving her a simple compliment on a bad day, could change her entire trajectory, helping her find confidence to pursue art instead of giving in to self-doubt. And there were others I'd never suspected, classmates, neighbors, even acquaintances who later told me that something I said in passing had reshaped their decisions in ways I could never have foreseen. It blew my mind. Have you ever been told that one casual, "You're good enough," saved someone from giving up entirely? Fast forward to my teenage years, and you'd find me huddled in a circle with 5 other girls' close friends who shared our hopes and fears like confidants at a sleepover. Inevitably, our conversations turned toward body image, relationships, and the tempting, yet perilous, paths some of us flirted with. I would always lean in and say, "You are more than your body. You are more than the clothes you wear or how the world sees you." It was my own imperfect way of echoing Galatians 6:2. Bear one another's burdens and so fulfill the law of Christ. I didn't want any of my friends, especially girls who felt trapped or unloved, to think they had only one option, like stripping or other degrading work, simply because they lacked a solid foundation. I poured my energy into encouraging them to see their worth, even when I struggled to see my own. Do you recall a time when a seemingly small pep talk kept you from making a decision you later would have regretted? One of those girls, the one I worried about most, confided in me that she'd been thinking about walking away into that darker world. But after hours of talking, I saw the fear lift from her eyes, and she instead chose to pursue a scholarship in cosmetology, transforming her life in a direction she never imagined. That moment felt nothing short of miraculous to me. It highlighted what my life review later confirmed. You're not only shown the harsh deeds you did, but also the beautiful, life-affirming connections you fostered. I saw that those late-night conversations, those shared tears, and those risky moments of heartbreak all contributed to something far bigger than any of us realized at the time. Then came the most astonishing revelation. During that life review, every single thought I'd ever had, whether about another person or even a beloved, patrocinated across the tapestry of existence. I experienced what might be called a collective empathy. where I could truly feel exactly how someone else felt, down to the last trembling fear or blossoming hope. It wasn't like watching scenes play on a screen. It was as if my consciousness fused with theirs for an instant. In that merging, I understood the truth of 1 Corinthians 12:26. If one member suffers, all suffer together. If one member is honored, all rejoice together. Every unspoken insecurity, every unvoiced prayer, and yes, even my harsh judgments and my moments of kindness rippled through other lives, storing themselves in their hearts like seeds waiting to sprout. If you knew that a passing thought of yours, a silent criticism, or an unspoken act of compassion could alter someone's destiny, would you still hold tight to those judgments? Would you guard your words, your glances, your inner monologue more carefully? Because in that luminous expanse, I saw beyond the 5 senses into a realm of pure interconnectedness. And it was humbling, terrifying, and somehow exhilarating, all at once, knowing that we are, in truth, woven into each other's stories in ways we can scarcely imagine. I soon found myself lifted into a new revelation known that began with my parents. In that luminous realm, I understood something astonishing. I had chosen my parents long before my birth. They were not merely my biological caretakers. They were my soul family, bound to me by sacred agreements forged in a realm beyond time. Picture us standing in a circle of stars, each of us nodding in solemn accord. Yes, we will walk this journey together. And yet, even these pre-birth contracts were not ironclad. We were each granted free will. As Deuteronomy 30:19 declares, I have set before you life and death, therefore choose life. In other words, though our souls made promises, we each still retain the power to decide our own path. Have you ever felt an unspoken bond with your parents that went deeper than shared DNA, that hinted at a purpose written in the stars? Then, as if to explain those inexplicable moments in my life, the sudden bursts of sorrow or joy without clear cause, I was shown how karma works. In an instant, I saw past lifetimes I had lived. In one existence, I witnessed myself ending another person's life in an act of violence. The memory was stark, my hand raised, a life extinguished, the echo of a heart's final beat. Immediately, the vision shifted to show that same soul from centuries ago, stepping toward me with a haunting gaze. We had made an agreement. In our next meeting, we would reverse roles. Not to the point of death this time, but enough to grant me a measure of the suffering I had once inflicted. Can you imagine the humility of feeling the pain you once caused, now directed at your own heart? This revelation cast a new light on so many experiences in my current life that had always seemed sudden and inexplicable, as if out of left field. Before I could fully digest that, I was inundated with a torrent of knowledge about energy and the human body, an accelerated masterclass that flashed before my mind's eye in mere seconds. Imagine the universe's most brilliant professor handing you a complete blueprint of how the body operates as an energetic vessel, from the tip of the crown chakra to the base of the spine. I saw, in lightning speed, how every thought, every emotion, is a frequency of vibration that radiates outwards into the world. Just as Proverbs 4:23 warns us, above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. I understood that unprocessed emotions lodge themselves like hidden files in our energetic filing cabinet. When grief or fear becomes too overwhelming to face, our soul tucks them away, perhaps in the lower back, until we can revisit them. Have you ever felt an inexplicable weight in your shoulders or a persistent ache in your lower back? Could it be that, somewhere deep within, you've stored an emotion you weren't ready to process? I also learned how the auric field encircles each of us, like layered waves of light, pulsating with the colors of our emotional and spiritual state. A blocked heart chakra might create a physical chest tightness. Fear lodged in the solar plexus could manifest as chronic indigestion. In that breathtaking moment, I saw how a single act of kindness can shift that entire frequency, inviting higher vibrations into our lives. Conversely, a harsh thought can lower us into a realm of tension and illness. Do you grasp how powerful your thoughts can be? How what you project outward can boomerang back in unexpected ways? All of this knowledge surged through me as though electrified by divine intention. The presence that guided me did not ask me to memorize every detail. It simply offered these truths so I could carry them back to the world of the living. And as I hovered on the brink of my next revelation, I had to wonder, once you know the mechanics of your own energy and the profound ties that bind you to others, would you ever see your life the same way again? I found myself transported next to a place I would come to know as the Crystal City, a realm of unimaginable splendor floating somewhere beyond the confines of space and time. It felt as though I were hovering 15, perhaps even 20 miles away from any earthly landmark, only I wasn't conscious of any distance in the way we think of it on Earth. In that absence of ordinary coordinates, I knew I had arrived at a sanctuary that shimmered like a jewel in the void. Everything I saw glowed with an inner radiance, as though each structure were carved from pure, translucent crystal that caught and refracted light in 1,000 directions. Have you ever watched sunlight dance across a perfectly cut gemstone and felt that urge to reach out and touch it? Imagine that sensation multiplied until the very air around you sparkles. I didn't linger long in this place, though, because someone came to meet me. I couldn't see their facino discernible features emerged in that fluid, glowing light. Yet I felt their presence as surely as I feel my own heart beating now. It was a body, or perhaps more accurately, an emanation of welcome. They wrapped me in an embrace so profound that I could feel every cell in my being settle, as if I were being anchored in the calmest harbor I'd ever known. In that moment, I somehow understood that this was a greeting from someone who had cared for me deeply, perhaps even someone who had been waiting for me since the moment I first disembodied. It felt like a hug from a friend I had never met in life, but whom my soul recognized instantly. Can you imagine the comfort of being held by a presence so suffused with love that all fear and doubt fell away in one perfect instant? As that embrace lifted, a gentle voice more felt than heard whispered, "Not yet. It is not your time to come home." And just like that, I felt myself drawn away from the Crystal City, as though a current were tugging me back toward whatever lay ahead. The departure was swift, and before I could fully register my reluctance, I was gone. Next, I was led to a place devoted entirely to healing the great sanctuary of souls. In that realm, I discovered the restorative pools designated for every spirit who, after sometimes many lifetimes of suffering, had come to rest here. Have you ever wondered what happens to a soul that has endured a life marked by warfare, trauma, or relentless grief? I saw that these souls arrived with wounds not just in memory, but embedded in their very essence. The healing pools were vast basins of crystalline water, each one glowing with a soft, pulsing light that seemed to resonate with the frequency of divine mercy itself. To see it was to feel the possibility of renewal deep in your bones. I watched as spirits step gingerly into the water, and with each step, the bruises of their past lives gently dissolved, as if the water itself were an elixir for every sorrow and scar. In Psalm 147:3, it is written, "He heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds." In that moment, I witnessed that promise manifested in pure, liquid form. All of this healing ground was built of white marble so flawless it might have been fashioned from a single colossal glacier. Towering columns each carved from the same luminous white stone rose like sentinels around the pools, their surfaces etched with symbols that seemed both familiar and inscrutable. These columns weren't merely decorative. They served as anchors for the energy of the sanctuary, channeling currents of love, forgiveness, and mercy into every corner of the sacred space. Imagine walking among pillars whose inscriptions shift beneath your gaze, sometimes reflecting your own past fears, sometimes showing the faces of those you've helped or harmed. What would it be like to see your own innocence and mistakes laid bare on stone taller than any cathedral? Time in that place was not measured by seconds or hours, but by the depth of one's need for healing. I was shown that some souls might linger there for a very, very long time, not because of any cosmic punishment, but simply because their wounds were so profound that they required extended care. Time, as I knew it on earth, had no meaning some rested for an age by human standards, while others were drawn onward more swiftly. It reminded me of the verse from Revelation 18:21, where the New Jerusalem's walls are described as jasper, clear as crystal. Its foundations were adorned with every kind of jewel. In the same way, each soul's journey through healing was as unique and multifaceted as the gems that adorned that heavenly city. While I hovered there, contemplating the serene faces of those immersed in healing waters, I began to understand that no suffering was ever wasted. Each pain, each act of compassion, even the smallest gesture of kindness, left an indelible imprint on the soul. In one corner, a spirit that had once been consumed by rage lay peacefully, guided by a flowing current of blue-green water that soothed every angry thought. In another basin, an aura flickered from dark purple to lavender, as forgiveness replaced sorrow for a soul that had lost everything in a lifetime of war. It was there that I realized our lives are not a series of isolated events. They are chords woven into a grand symphony of energy and empathy. Have you ever considered that a single act of kindness could ripple beyond your own lifetime and become a healing balm for a stranger's soul? As I absorbed these revelations, I felt a stirring within me, awareness that when, or if, I returned to my body, I carried with me not only the memory of crystalline halls and healing waters, but also a mandate to embody that same healing energy. If every soul has a time to rest and recover, then my purpose upon returning would be to share that restorative love in whatever way I could. But the sanctuary's lessons did not end there. Before I was drawn away, I caught sight of a column inscribed with a simple yet profound truth. Where there is pain, there is also the seed of healing. And in that statement lay my final question for you. Dear reader, if you knew that every challenge you face could shape you into a conduit of healing for others, would you embrace that purpose now? Or would you wait until the pools of eternity called your name? Have you ever wondered what it might feel like to stand before a vast library that contains the story of every lifetime you've ever lived, written in volumes that stretch higher than the tallest mountain? In that realm beyond our physical world, I found myself standing at the threshold of what I call the Hall of Records, though many call it the Akashic Records. It didn't matter what name we gave it. The moment I gazed upon those endless shelves, I understood that I was looking at something like Revelation 20:12 described, the book's opening, and another book was opened, which is the Book of Life. These tomes rose so high that I strained my eyes, and even when I stepped back to take them in, the topmost volumes vanished into a glow of brilliant light. My own book was pronouncedly thick, obviously. I had lived many lifetimes. Have you ever thought about the idea that your soul might have walked the earth before, in entirely different bodies and circumstances? As I let my eyes travel up and down that thick spine of my Akashic book, I noticed a little ribbon tucked between the pages of my current lifetime. It surprised me with its vividness. Chapter in this world was marked plainly, as though someone had said, Here and now begins your work. I recall the first time I read Harry Potter and marveled at how J.K. Rowling described the Hall of Prophecies, and a part of me thought, perhaps she spoke with folks who glimpsed their own records in a near-death experience. Years later, watching those books appear on screen, I realized how eerily close her vision was to what I saw. As I lingered there, I was shown that not all souls exist on the same vibrational plane. Imagine a cosmic spectrum where frequencies run from 1 to 10. Some souls vibrate at a level 3 frequency, others at 5 or 6. Have you ever felt more in sync with someone who seemed to speak on your wavelength, as if you shared a secret language? That is what it means for souls to be on the same level of understanding and vibration. The Hall of Records was populated by volumes belonging to souls at all these levels. Some books were simple, handwritten record short, concise, as if the soul had only dipped its toes into humanity. Others were vast, leather-bound tomes with pages that shimmered and refused to lie flat evidence of lifetimes, so long and layered that no single passage could capture their complexity. Suddenly, the scene shifted. A long table appeared before me, illuminated by a gentle, pulsating light that seemed to emanate from the very surface of the table itself. Around it sat a council I recognized as akin to what some call the Cosmic Board, though it was nothing like a government or bureaucratic body. If I had to liken it to anything, I would say it felt more like a gathering of elders from multiple dimensions, each radiating wisdom so profound it was as if they held the keys to the entire universe. Have you ever stood in a room so quiet that every pulse of your heartbeat echoes like thunder? That's how I felt every sense sharpened, every thought amplified. Some of these beings appeared as pure, walking light luminescent figures whose forms shifted fluidly from pearly whites to pale pinks to almost imperceptible blues. Others wore cloaks of white marble that glowed from within, as though they were carved from frozen starlight. One being, clad in a deep blue robe that seemed to ripple like water at midnight, turned toward me, and I felt so small standing before such an entity. Yet there was no fear, only a reverent awe, as if I stood at the foot of the cosmos itself. These mentors did not speak in ordinary words. Instead, their language was telepathica, direct transmission of thought, free of any spoken limitations. In those silent exchanges, I learned that they came from other galaxies and other dimensions, traveling here on wormhole highways that defied our usual concept of space. They explained, almost gently, that some beings simply step into a portal and are instantly transported. Others require a more tangible journey through a swirling tube of color. Imagine a tunnel where the walls are alive, flashes of violet, emerald, and gold spinning so fast you can barely focus, yet you feel yourself sort of buffeted, as though your soul is riding turbulent waves. It felt bumpy, a sensation I still can't fully describe, like being on a roller coaster built from stardust. Have you ever closed your eyes and imagined traveling so fast that the stars themselves become a blur? That was exactly how I passed from one realm to another. Before I could ask more, the corridor of wormhole light dissolved, and I was back in the Hall of Records Sexcept. Now the Cosmic Board's table lay before me, and their attenuated figures winked out like candles being snuffed. The rest of the hall collapsed into a soft, dim glow. It struck me that everything around Use's book, each solis part of an intricate tapestry beyond time. Does it ever occur to you that we are threads in a fabric too vast for any human mind to fully comprehend? Even after I returned to my body, this memory of the Hall of Records and the Cosmic Board remained so vivid that, on nights when I tried to sleep, I could feel the hum of that telepathic wisdom vibrating through my mind. Whenever I describe it to someone who has never had such an experience, I ask them to imagine standing in a great library whose walls breathe where knowledge isn't stored on pages, but in the living essence of each book. How would that change the way you treat your memories, your actions, or even your friends? If you knew every word you spoke, every thought you entertained, was meticulously recorded in a volume some cosmic librarian might one day open, would you still think twice before you judged or judged unkindly? And if you could glimpse the counsel of pure light, those multi-dimensional mentors, would you be humbled by the awareness that the universe itself has guides tending its tapestry? That, in fact, nothing you do in a single lifetime is ever truly erased, but instead is woven into a continuum of purpose and possibility far beyond our earthly concerns. As I stood there, bathed in starlight and truth, I whispered the words of 2 Timothy 3:16 in my mind. All scripture is breathed out by God and profitable for teaching. In that moment, every page, every counselor, every wormhole became a living testament to how infinite and interconnected our lives truly are yet. I remain here, bound by human limitations, wondering how best to share these revelations with you. So I leave you with this final question. If you could hold the record of your soul in your own hands, would you read it? Or would the knowledge that all your deeds are recorded, as Ecclesiastes 12:14 says, compel you to live differently, starting right now? Have you ever been shown a glimpse of what lies ahead and wondered if you really wanted to see it? I was in a Charon, ordinary-looking seat, yet somehow it felt like the center of something extraordinary when a series of huge golden spheres began to appear. Imagine balls the size of beach balls, only glowing with an inner light, as if infused with molten gold. Have you ever watched the sun's rays glint off a coin and felt that warmth tingling at your fingertips? Now, imagine that warmth magnified until it radiates off a sphere, filling the air around you with a soft hum of power. Each sphere would drift gently in front of me, pause as though collecting drama from the universe, and then split open like a flower, revealing a living movie. The first image fired like a thunderbolt, the dawn of humankind, but from its very beginning, it was drenched in blood. From tribal skirmishes to colossal battles, the scenes played out in relentless succession, murder after murder, war after war, each more brutal than the last. I saw soldiers marching across barren fields, their faces painted in mud and fear, swords raised high as the earth shook beneath their feet. Can you picture a battlefield where no face is spared, the agony of loss, where the cries of the fallen echo for all eternity? The next sequence was no less harrowing. Towering infernos, devouring entire cities, flames leaping skyward like angry dragons. Homes burned, families perished, and everywhere I looked, I witnessed death's unyielding grip. Yet it did not end there. A sudden tilt in the sphere's glow transported me to violent storms crashing upon ancient shoreline tides that roared in like vengeful armies, sweeping villages into oblivion. It was like witnessing the judgment of the flood foretold in Genesis 6:17. Behold, I will bring a flood of waters upon the earth to destroy all flesh, in which is the breath of life under heaven. Have you ever felt the ground tremble beneath your feet, as if the world itself were about to be undone? Then came images of mass protests, not just in one era, but across the ages, voices rising in rage, banners lifted high, people desperate to be heard. The camera cut swiftly from one demonstration to another, each one drenched in anger, each one a testament to human frustration. I saw crowds clashing with soldiers, the stench of smoke mingled with tear gas, and every shout for justice echoed with an undertone of fear. Does your chest tighten when you think of crowds fueling themselves with righteous fury, each soul convinced their cause is the most urgent of all? As the golden orb continued its relentless show, civil wars erupted across continents, brother against brother, neighbor against neighbor. Starvation etched gaunt lines on faces once filled with hope. Children's hollow eyes stared out at me from famine-stricken settlements, and my heart felt as though it would shatter. It was like watching a never-ending chapter of Lamentations 4, 3, 4. Even jackals give their breasts to their young. The daughter of my people has become cruel. Like ostriches in the wilderness, the tongues of the nursing infants stuck to the roof of their mouths for thirst. What would it take for us to finally learn to change before the unthinkable becomes our daily reality? Unable to bear anymore, I found myself pleading inwardly, "Stop it. Please, I can't watch this any longer." I realized then that my compassion had reached its limit, that even in a realm far removed from time and space, the sorrow of our world was too heavy to bear. Had you been in my place, would you have asked for mercy, or would you have been compelled to keep watching, hoping to see a glimmer of hope that never came? I learned in that moment that sometimes our greatest fear is not death itself, but the unfiltered truth of humanity, capacity for destruction, our grief, our relentless cycle of violence. And as I sat, trembling in that glowing chair, I understood why the prophets of old cried out in despair, why they warned us through scripture that unless we change our ways, we are doomed to repeat the same devastating patterns. Would you dare to look upon the future unflinchingly, or would you, like me, finally cry out for the vision to end? Have you ever wondered why we, as human beings, keep fighting among ourselves over what seems like the most trivial things? In that otherworldly realm where I awoke to infinite clarity, I was shown the heartbreaking truth. Conflict arises whenever we forget that we are all in the same team, brothers and sisters, bound by a common destiny. I witnessed disputes erupt over the smallest differences: religion, geography, the ownership of land, even something as basic as crops. Imagine an argument so fierce it sears itself into your soul, not because the stakes are truly insurmountable, but because we lose sight of the fact that every one of us shares the same breath, the same heartbeat, the same desire to be seen and valued. Have you ever paused to consider that a disagreement about property or ritual could, in essence, be nothing more than two souls who have forgotten their shared origin? In that moment, it became clear that every culture, every faith, every tradition springs from the same well of divinity. We are all children of the same Creator, each of us given this marvelous gift of life to learn, love, and grow together, not to tear one another down. As I stood in that luminous space, I felt a deep sorrow for the countless lives cut short, the families shattered, and the bridges burned, all because we failed to remember our shared purpose. Think about it. If you truly believed that the stranger beside you was your own brother or sister, would you still be so quick to judge, to take up arms, or to spread hatred? Would you not, instead, extend a hand in compassion? And yet, in the midst of that revelation, I felt a profound grief of my own. I had believed, up until that moment, that my life was just beginning, that I had so much left to do, so many gifts left to give. In my disbelief, I collapsed in tears and whispered to the unseen presence guiding me. I didn't even get to truly start living. I looked back on the years I had almost squandered, thinking I had all the time in the world to fulfill my soul's purpose. Suddenly, I understood that my return to Earth, a choice I had once thought sealed, was not guaranteed. My life contract, the very blueprint of my existence, hinged on my decision in that moment to come back and complete the mission I had been given, or to remain in that transcendent realm forever. What would you do if you knew that your choice to return would mean embracing unimaginable pain on every level: physical, emotional, mental, and psychological. The truth was starkly laid before me. If I chose to come back, I would be forced to endure suffering I could not entirely heal. There would be scarsome hidden beneath my skin, others etched deep within my mind, and I would carry them for the rest of my earthly life. I would feel the raw ache of loss, the burn of loneliness, and the sting of betrayal. Even my body, once whole and vibrant, would bear reminders of past injuries and traumas that might resurface without warning. It was as if I stood face to face with Isaiah's warning in Isaiah 53:4. Surely he has borne our griefs and carried our sorrows, except this time, those sorrows were meant for me to carry, a testament to the work I had yet to do. Still, a voice, gentle yet unwavering, asked me again, "Do you want to come back?" And though tears blurred my vision, my answer emerged with unwavering conviction. Yes, I do. Because in that moment, I believed with all my heart that the purpose of my existence could not be fulfilled without returning. I understood that the true work I was meant to do was to become a living bridge, a reminder to others of the invisible threads that bind us as a single human family. If every soul recognized how intrinsically connected we are, perhaps we would let go of the false beliefs that divide us, be it racism, religious intolerance, or nationalistic pride. After all, if you accept that we are all crafted from the same divine spark, held together by the same cosmic breath, wouldn't you think twice before refusing to see the face of Christ in the eyes of a stranger? Matthew 25:40 reminds us, "Truly, I say to you, as you did it to one of the least of these my brothers, you did it to me." In that realm, I felt that truth pulsating through every fiber of creation. And so, I agreed to return, knowing full well that the path ahead would be strewn with thorns. I was told that each wound I would bear would serve as a reminder, a signpost guiding me back to the lessons I had once forgotten. I would learn to see the world through two lenses, the scars I carried and the luminous truth that lay beyond them. I would be challenged to hold compassion even when I was at the brink of despair, to radiate love even as the darkness threatened to engulf me. Do you think you could sustain that level of faith when your body ached beyond measure, when the world around you seemed determined to forget its own highest calling? Yet, as I prepared to go back, I felt an undeniable certainty. My work was desperately needed. From that place of clarity, I resolved to share what I had learned about our shared humanity, to help others glimpse the same truth that had set me free. And that is why, when I returned to my body, I began guiding people one soul at a time through the maze of their own energy. I wanted them to see how, just as my parents had been my soul family before incarnation, each of us is connected to everyone else in unseen ways. It was as though I had been given a map to the hidden currents of the human spirit, and my mission was to teach others how to read it for themselves. If you're wondering how to find me today, I am on Instagram under Inside a Space, where I have been working one-on-one with people since the 1990s. I offer energy readings and help you learn to see your own energetic field, that invisible glow that surrounds you, pulsating with your emotions, your strengths, and your wounds. Do you know what it feels like to sense the tension in a room the moment you walk in? Or to intuitively know when someone is near tears, even though they wear a mask of composure? These are not tricks or illusions. They are the natural language of energy, and it is a language we were all born to speak, if only we remember how. My teaching is simple yet profound. I give you tools to recognize the blocks that hold you captive, fears lodged in your heart, unprocessed grief stored like files in your lower back, anger simmering beneath your ribs. I show you how to release each one, so that you don't have to keep returning to someone else for relief. If you can learn to move energy drawing in the high vibrations of love, compassion, and forgiveness, and releasing the low vibrations of judgment, resentment, and fear, then you become a beacon, not just for yourself, but for everyone who crosses your path. Imagine what it would mean if, in every heated argument or moment of prejudice, someone paused to remember that we are all siblings born of the same source. Imagine if each of us decided to wield our thoughts and words as instruments of healing rather than weapons of pain. So I ask you, if you could carry a fragment of that heavenly clarity into your own life, would you be willing to confront your deepest wounds? Would you be brave enough to hold the awareness that every conflict you avoid or engage echoes in the soul of another? Because if there is one lesson I can leave you with, it is this. We are all children of the same breath, capable of unfathomable compassion and equally capable of unfathomable cruelty. Choosing to embrace the former is the greatest act of courage we can offer to each other. If you want to know more, if you feel a tug in your heart that whispers, there is more, then let us connect. Find me on Instagram at Insight, and let's walk this path together. Let me show you how to reclaim your own energetic power so that you, too, can learn to love without boundaries, forgive without regret, and live with the knowledge that, no matter where you are or what you believe, you are part of a vast, sacred family, one that bridges all dimensions, all time, and all places. In the end, every revelation stills one undeniable truth. We are all part of the same story, bound by shared purpose as brothers and sisters. May the awareness of our unseen connections guide us to choose compassion over division in every moment. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned for the next video, where we'll uncover even more insights into our shared journey.